Who you are today, your confidence or your insecurity, your ability to love or your guardedness, how you relate to money, to success, to the people closest to you, was about 80% shaped before you turned 7. I know how that sounds, unfair, too final, but if you look at your life honestly, you'll see the tracks. The same stories repeating, the same relationships that somehow keep resembling each other, the same inner voices that switch on in the same situations, the same fears you know as your own, even though you never chose them. Where did all of it come from? Who wrote it into you? Today we're talking about the two people who did more to you than everyone else combined, your mother and your father. And one important caveat up front, this isn't a conversation for blaming anyone. It's a conversation for finally seeing the mechanism that's been running your life for years. Because as long as you can't see it, it runs you. The moment you can see it, you have a choice for the first time. Let's start with a strange idea. A child isn't born as a separate being. It sounds paradoxical, but it's true. In the first months of life, an infant doesn't know where he ends and his mother begins. His nervous system is a literal extension of hers. If she's calm, he's calm. If she's anxious, the anxiety becomes his bodily state before he even knows what anxiety is. This is a child's first universe, not a room, not a house, the mother. Through her, he absorbs his first sense of whether the world is safe, whether he's loved, whether it's okay to relax, whether it's okay to be himself. And alongside that, another person gradually enters the child's life, the father, who, for this small being, becomes the first experience of the world beyond the mother's closeness, the first sense of strength, in its kind form or its destructive one, the first experience of authority, the kind you can trust or the kind you have to fear. The mother shows the child who he is. The father shows the child what the world is like. It's a simplification, but in broad strokes, that's how it works. And it's exactly why no other figure in his life, not a teacher, not a friend, not even a spouse, will ever get this deep an access to his inner wiring. Now, what exactly they pass on? Not what they say. Words come second. The main thing passes through the atmosphere, through the tone of voice, through how the mother picks the child up, relaxed or tense, through how the father walks in the door, with relief or with irritation, through what they live by. A child doesn't listen, he scans and records. If the mother is always anxious, the child records, the world is dangerous, you can't relax. If the father flies into anger, the child records, being close to a man means risk, better keep your distance. If the mother loves but demands perfection, the child records, love has to be earned. If the father is rarely home, and when he is, he's wrapped up in his own things, the child records, I'm not important enough for anyone to make time for me. If the mother stays silent about her feelings, the child records, you don't show feelings. If the father is critical, the child records, whatever I do, it's not enough. This isn't some parenting choice. It's what they carry inside themselves. They pass on not what they want to teach, but what they are. An anxious mother can't raise a calm child, no matter how hard she tries to say the right words. A closed-off father can't teach his son closeness, even if he understands that closeness matters. This might be the most important idea in today's conversation. Parents don't pass on words. They pass on their own state. Now, about the fact that every parent carries their own load. A mother who grew up in a family where she herself wasn't heard won't learn to hear her child just because she gave birth to him. She love, but love in the only way she knows. And often that won't be the way the child needs. A father whose own father was cold and distant will find he doesn't know how to be warm with his own son. He might suffer over it. He might try. But without serious inner work, he'll repeat what he knows. This isn't an excuse. It's just a fact. Wounds pass down through generations. A mother passes on what she got from her mother. A father passes on what he learned from his. And if no one in the chain stops, it keeps going. So when you look at your parents, try to see not only how they failed you, try to see the ones who failed them. This doesn't remove responsibility, but it gives you the right perspective. And without it, you'll either blame or idealize. Neither one sets you free. Now, how this shows up in adult life. Let's take a few recognizable types. A person raised by a critical mother becomes an adult perfectionist. Whatever he does, a voice inside says, it's not enough. He achieves, he over-delivers, and feels no satisfaction. Because the voice inside isn't his. It's the internalized voice of a mother who was never satisfied. A person raised by a cold father becomes an adult who can't take in love. When a partner says something warm, he tenses up inside. When he's praised, he deflects with a joke. When closeness gets too close, he creates distance. Not because he doesn't want love, because his system has no file for how to be loved. The file for how to earn approval is there. The file for how to accept that you're loved for nothing in return isn't. A person raised by an anxious mother becomes an adult with worry running in the background all the time. He can be successful, his life can be stable, but inside there's a constant expectation that something will collapse. That's not paranoia. It's a nervous system that, in childhood, got tuned to the signal something's always about to go wrong. A person raised by a strict, demanding father becomes an adult who lives from one achievement to the next, without joy, without rest, without letting himself stop. Because inside there's a child who once got the message, you're valued for what you do, not for who you are. And that child is still trying to prove it. A person whose mother put him in the role of an adult, confided in him like a girlfriend, shared her problems, leaned on him for support, grows into someone who constantly takes care of others, but can't let anyone take care of him. He's used to being needed. He's not used to simply being loved. A person whose father left early or was emotionally absent either demands too much in adult relationships, because inside there's a thirst that was never quenched, or avoids closeness altogether, so as not to be abandoned again. If you recognized yourself in more than one, that's normal. Most people carry several of these patterns at once. Friends, a quick pause. If this conversation is reaching you, please give the video a like. I know it's awkward to ask, but it really does help the channel, and it helps this video reach the people who need it right now. Thank you. I want to tell a story to illustrate how a parent's wounds don't exist in a vacuum. They can be amplified by other adults who turn up in a child's life. In one family there was a boy. Let's call him Alex. His father was strict, the kind who believes you have to keep kids hard or they'll grow up soft. He rarely praised. He snapped often. There were rules at home, and breaking one was punished with cold. The mother loved her son, but her love often came out as anxiety and as attempts to smooth over what the father did. She was worn out too. Alex was a difficult teenager. He was rude to her. He talked back. He didn't listen. And no one in the family understood that the rudeness wasn't a bad character. It was how a boy growing up next to a strict father let out the tension that had built up. Being rude to his mother was safer than being rude to his father. The mother tried different things. At one point, she went to the school. At a parents' meeting, she complained that she couldn't cope, that her son was rude, that she didn't know how to talk to him. The math teacher heard this, Mrs. Doyle, known across the whole school for her strictness. In her class, no one raised a hand first, not because they didn't know the answer, but because they were afraid to be wrong. When someone didn't understand the material, she'd get so irritated that even the ones who did understand started getting confused. The fear got in the way of thinking. Kids went up to the board and forgot what they'd known by heart the day before. She thought she was building character with her strictness. In fact, she was breaking the ability to learn. A good teacher opens the world. She was closing it. And one day in class, Alex said something rude. It was a habit. That's how he talked at home. Mrs. Doyle stopped the lesson, looked at him, and said, in front of the whole class, 30 pairs of eyes, she said, "Alex, I know how you talk to your mother. Your mother complained at the meeting. That's exactly how you'll talk to your wife someday. Mark my words, your life is already written. Silence. The class froze. What did that teacher do in that moment? She took a boy who was already carrying a hard load, a strict father, a worn-out mother, his own confusion about what was happening to him, and added a public verdict to that load. From an adult, from an authority, in front of witnesses. From that day, one more voice moved into Alex's head. Not his father's, not his mother's, Mrs. Doyle's. And that voice said, "You're bad. You're doomed. You'll repeat what your father does." What happened to Alex after that is worth looking at, because it shows how wounds work in adult life. Alex grew up. On the outside, everything came together. Education, a job, a family. He became, by all appearances, a good man. Polite, attentive, never raised his voice at his wife, never missed his mother-in-law's birthday, helped his parents, carried whatever needed carrying. But one day his wife said something that stung. She said, "Alex, I can't feel you. It's like you're always on a stage." He didn't get it. Then he was hurt. Then, a week later, he started to wonder, and he started to notice. When he walked into a public restroom and saw a mess, he'd clean it up. And he realized the motive wasn't, "I hate living in a dirty world." The motive was, "So the next person who walks in thinks well of me," anonymously. So that someone, anyone who didn't even know him would see, a good man was here. When he helped a coworker, he did it while carefully watching the reaction. Did they notice? Did they remember? When he was kind to his wife, it wasn't free kindness. Underneath it sat a constant question. Does she see that I'm not who Mrs. Doyle said I was? Does my father see that I'm not who he thought I was? His whole life pointed not inward, but outward, toward an imaginary court, one that was finally supposed to hand down a verdict of acquittal. But that court never handed it down. Not because Alex wasn't good enough, because verdicts like that aren't handed down from the outside at all. They can only be felt from within. Alex spent his whole life trying to disprove his father and Mrs. Doyle, so they'd see he wasn't like that. But they didn't see, because his father no longer remembered those words. And Mrs. Doyle, most likely, didn't remember Alex at all, among the thousands of students she had. The verdict was handed down once, and it lived inside. This is a very common story, maybe the most common one. When someone significant hands a person a verdict in childhood, a father, a mother, a teacher, anyone with authority, that person then spends a whole life either confirming the verdict or trying to disprove it. Confirming it is easier psychologically, harder in terms of life. A person more or less decides, if that's what I am, then that's what I'll be, and lives like a condemned man. Disproving it is the successful version of suffering. A person achieves, proves, over-delivers, and never reaches the feeling that he's proven anything, because the verdict is inside, not outside. Both are a prison. One just has an open door no one walks through, and the other has an endless treadmill that never reaches a finish line. Now, what to do about it? First, name it honestly. Take a sheet of paper. On the left, what you got from your mother, the good and the bad. On the right, what you got from your father. No generalizing, specifics. My mother never praised me. My father was rarely home. My mother loved me, but on a condition, if I matched her expectations. My father was strict and snapped easily. This isn't for blame, it's for clarity. Second, ask yourself, which of these programs are running now? Not in childhood, now. Where do you repeat what you absorbed? Where do you avoid something because it was dangerous in childhood? Where are you proving to someone invisible that you're not like that? Third, let yourself grieve. This is the hardest step. Many people skip it, but without it, the rest doesn't work. Let yourself mourn what you didn't have. The mother who could have been warm, the father who could have been there, the childhood that could have held more safety. This grief isn't self-pity. It's for closure. Until it's mourned, a part of you keeps waiting for them to make up for it one day. They won't. They gave what they could. Grief is where you let go of that waiting. Fourth, separate understanding from excusing. Understanding why your mother was the way she was doesn't mean saying it was okay. Understanding your father doesn't mean closing your eyes to how he hurt you. Understanding is about causes. Excusing is about denying the wounds. They're two different things. Fifth, forgive. But with the right understanding of what forgiveness is. Forgiving a parent doesn't mean saying it was all fine. It means taking off the chain with them on the other end of it. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. It frees the one who forgives, not the one who's forgiven. Sixth, find an inner ground that doesn't depend on anyone's opinion. This is the most delicate part. As long as your only judge is your parents, society, or yourself, you never leave the courtroom. You need something larger than all those voices, something that knew you before they did, and that doesn't hand down verdicts like that at all. Everyone names it for themselves, but if you'll even allow that such a ground is possible, something inside starts to unclench. I want to say one more thing before we finish. If you have children, all of this concerns them twice over, because what you haven't worked through gets passed to them, not through your intentions, through your state, exactly the way it was once passed to you. This isn't cause for panic. Children don't need perfect parents. They need honest ones. The kind who see their patterns and at least try to work on them. That, honestly, is enough. Perfectionism here is just another trap, the kind that catches people who weren't given enough safety as children. Be gentler with yourself, but be honest. That combination, gentleness and honesty, is exactly what gives children what they need most. Short summary. A mother and father don't shape a child with words. They shape him with their state, with what they live by. They do it differently. The mother shows the child who he is. The father shows him what the world is like. To see only one of these figures and talk only about the other is to see half the picture. Wounds passed down through generations. Understanding that doesn't remove responsibility. It lets you see the scale of it. Sometimes other adults, a teacher, a coach, a relative, can amplify a wound that's already there. A single public verdict can shape decades of a life. A life built on proving you're not what you were called is a prison, just on the other side of the bars. Freedom begins with naming it honestly, living through the grief, separating understanding from excusing, and finding a ground that doesn't depend on anyone's opinion of you. Everyone names that ground for themselves, but without it, there's no real freedom. If this conversation mattered to you, please give it a like, and in the comments, you can share who left the deepest marks on you. Until next time.